And we are live. Hi, everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'm the real deal dude. You can call me Don. And like to introduce Mama, Casey, and Chivawalla Walla Chibang Bang, which is really great for me to try to say for the first time right now. But thanks, guys, for joining me. Today, I kind of wanted to talk about Doge. And not the coin, but the pseudo government agency created under the Trump administration. They the purpose, I would say, on its face, as stated, is a good purpose. We all want to see waste and fraud and abuse cut out of the government spending. That just makes sense. But I don't think it's really operating that way. So the Department of Government Efficiency was established during Trump's second term to streamline federal operations and reduce government spending. Led by Elon Musk, DOGE claims aims to cut federal expenditures by up to 2 trillion dollars by 2026. The concept emerged from discussions between Musk and Trump in 24, focusing on concerns over excessive spending. Formally established by executive order on January 20, day one of Trump's administration, DOGE functions as an advisory body with the executive office of the president is the official description, but they've been functioning more like hatchet men, getting rid of long-term government employees, firing people without cause or with made up cause, offering buyouts. They they have listed a whole bunch of savings on their website that then they've recently had to delete, and it turns out the ones that they've left on their website, crazily enough, were savings done under previous administrations. So it's not even anything they can count under their own savings. And the most recent one that actually did save any substantial income whatsoever was done under Biden. So how do you claim that's a saving under Doge? So they plan to optimize the workforce to restructure federal agencies, and they claim transparency in data management. But who works for Doge besides Musk? Has that been put out in the media? I haven't seen any mainstream news, and I've seen very few independent journalists who actually cover the young people that work for Elon Musk and have all of this access to your private information and the country's finances and things like that. And it's just rather concerning. There are legal and ethical concerns. They've been challenged for lacking transparency and bypassing traditional oversight mechanisms. A federal judge ruled Doge must release records of its operations, highlighting concerns about unusual secrecy. There's been a lot of resignations among federal technology staffers who objected to Doge's methods and objectives, citing ethical concerns about dismantling critical public services. And protests have emerged against Doge's actions, with critics arguing that the cuts undermine essential government functions and services. And I think the recent rash of plane crashes, it can be squarely laid at the feet of these substantial firings of air traffic controllers. I don't know why I can't speak today. But as of March of 25, Doge continues to implement its agenda, and it remains a focal point of debate regarding the balance between efficiency and the preservation of essential public services. So it's kind of my understanding that it's just really maybe a good idea and a very terrible execution that is meant to really kind of just pay for these tax cuts for the wealthy. And I'm not wealthy, and I would
Mm.
imagine just about everyone who might watch this stream would also fall into the not wealthy category. So if you're out there and you'd like to join this conversation, you can find my server on Discord. It's called Honesty is a Dead Virtue. Hopefully, one of the guests I have on with me today would be kind enough to drop the link to the server in the YouTube chat. I'd really appreciate that if you could do that.
Got you.
And with that, I'm going to go ahead and mute myself and open it up to Mama here and Casey and see if you ladies have anything you'd like to say, like to add, or any concerns you have about Doge and Musk. It's all yours.
Oh, I tried to link the Discord. I don't know if that's working in the chat there.
I'm not seeing it. Let me see what I can do from over here.
Hey, there's Billy. Um, I guess that, well, I have just a lot of questions about the Doge stuff. Because I was saying before we started the stream, I haven't kept up with a lot of news, and a lot of this stuff is not my expertise by any means. But it's been an interesting experience, I guess, the positive spin on learning a little bit,
Uh huh.
um, or at least giving me the opportunity to learn. I don't know what I'm learning right now, but I'm getting a little bit of feedback on your mic there, Sabrina. Sorry. What was I gonna say?
So you were learning? You want to learn a little bit about more about Doge?
Oh, um, well, because the first thing I'm curious about is, hasn't there already been um departments that have the purpose is to focus on efficiency, auditing various agencies and all that, and holding accountability. So they really just restructured an already existing department.
Well, even worse than
But
that, they kind of sidestepped congressional authority because it was the several different oversight committees throughout the House and Senate that would um, look at these programs, and these programs were approved by lawmakers. And so we've got an
oh, hang on.
unelected bureaucrat.
Don, you are muted, so I can barely hear you through Mama's mic.
My
Yeah,
mistake. Thank you.
that is there we go. There we
So
go.
yeah, it's just worse, because we have an unelected bureaucrat who has access to all this information and everything, and making all these cuts and doing it by sidestepping congressional authority, which is what had the power to institute these programs to begin with. They were instituted by lawmakers, and the oversight committees throughout the House and the Senate are the ones who would normally audit these programs and cut the spending to where it needed to be, or increase spending where it needed to be. And so we've
Hmm.
got a Trump appointee who either does or does not run the organization, because there's different reports all coming from Trump. He's either both in charge and not in charge at the same time. And
Hmm.
they have access to your and I personal information. Anybody who has paid into the Social Security Department, has ever paid taxes to the IRS or received a refund, these guys have all that information, they have access to it, and they're tech bros. So my concern is, are they building back doors so they can access this information at any time they want and sell it for profit? I mean, that's not out of the realm of
Mm.
possibility, and it's a very real fear in today.
Yeah. And part of the issue too is they're not, I mean, this was an issue during the first administration that they'd be running background checks and people wouldn't pass, and yet they'd still be put into positions where they have access to this information. So it's just, uh, I think for the people that have been leaning towards trusting in the institutions that have existed and the safeguards that have already been in place, I think for us, we're going to be more likely to be worried by this. But I'm trying to think of the mentality of like it popped into my head of like the sovereign citizens out there that have been saying all along, oh, you shouldn't be paying taxes at all.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they were right all along.
Maybe they could have been right all along. Absolutely. I don't know. I um I kind of like the system as it is. I'm not saying it's without problems. It has tons of problems, but show me a system that doesn't. And so I tend to think that maybe the best thing to do is to work within the system that we have and fix the problems. But what we need is we need honest people who aren't there to enrich themselves, but are there to look out for their fellow man, for the people they were elected by, the ones that they claim to represent. And well, the system what we have is we have a lot of people who tell you what they think you want to hear, and then they get elected to office. And after they set up shop, they turn their back on you and do whatever they want to do. And that's not that's not what we signed up for. That's not how this country was made. And specifically with DOGE, they're sidestepping the processes, and that's the most concerning thing. Is that if I'm not mistaken, only 60 or so% of eligible voters voted, and so it was just barely a little more that voted for Trump than Harris. And but those that did asked for this, and why would they want that to be necessary? Why would they think that it is necessary?
I can't offer too much insight as far as uh, the people I've talked with the most that voted for him were not expecting this. I actually, when you touched on the issues with like the airplanes crashing and stuff, um, my dad, uh, I can't remember if it was last summer or the summer before, actually retired from the FAA, and I've had some conversations with him about it, and that's kind of more so been an ongoing issue. We can look back for however many decades at this point that there's been just not enough money put into air traffic control and conversation stuff like that. And this isn't necessarily a new thing. I think that has been more so just publicized more recently and kind of just catching people's eye in the same way that the train derailments, like that's the trains have been derailing, and it doesn't help whenever we do defund certain sectors. But yeah, that's the whole question is like if we want to improve it, do we just keep defunding because that's not seeming to help and that seems to be the strategy. And I I can't understand because that's where I do like wonder for the people that voted for him that weren't expecting it. It's like what were you expecting? I think this was well advertised. We understood from Trump's first administration. Um, But I wonder if it's more so for certain people that they had their eyes set on other issues and didn't consider this as much. Um, in the same way, I've talked with my dad in particular about this was something Alex from one of our other servers had brought up, that it's like they'll have this admission that they're willing to risk our institutions. They'll say, well, our institutions can handle it. And it's like, well, why are we testing them to begin with? You know that Trump has already tried to commit an insurrection, but you're going to risk that again for what? And for some of them, I think they're seeing whatever amount of cognitive dissonance that gets them to think that this is an administration that cares about family values. Some of them are the single issue voters that really want to see abortion overturned at a national level. Um, but that's kind of shifting the topic away from DOGE. Um, and we could maybe tie that into how efficient can a government be if we aren't allowing and uplifting diverse communities striving for equity, inclusion, accessibility.
Absolutely, because socially, even down to the genetic level, diversity is strength. And what the conservative movement today is pushing for, and I'm specifically talking about white Christian nationalists, is definitely not diverse. And so they're pushing for a weak system. A weak system we can show logically and biologically that it's a weak system. And the fact that they refuse to recognize this is, in my opinion, what makes them dishonest. And that's one of the reasons I named my server the way it is. It's one of the reasons that honesty is so important to me. Is you can lie, and you can find gullible people to believe anything you say. Yeah, you really can. And I just point to any cult that you can think of that is operating today or in the past. Look at Jim Jones. That was 1,100 people who gave up everything they knew, all of their family, to follow this one religious cult leader all the way to their death. And some of them died willingly, and some of them died very unwillingly, as history has shown us. And if I look at the cuts that Musk is making with the blessing of the Trump administration or regime, as I like to call them, they just seem to be following a very Jim Jones model. They're very cult captured, and they just anything he says, they're fine with it. They're fine with it. Eggs are crazy expensive. Gas is still up. The grocery prices aren't down. We don't have enough housing. We still have a lot of homeless people. We still have a healthcare crisis. We still have all the problems that he ran on fixing. And he's had 60 days, almost 90. He's had almost 90 days. And all he's done is make it worse. Why does he have any support? His support is waning. It's at an all-time low from last I heard. But yeah, if you happen to be watching this and you think that Trump is doing a good job, that DOGE is doing a good job, click the Discord link that I've posted here in the chat and join in and tell us exactly why everything that's going on is good. I I welcome you. But just be honest. So let me ask you, Billy, what do you think about DOGE and the Trump administration regime? How do you refer to them?
Well, I'm trying to be as polite and professional as I can. I'm going to say that they're trying to bully their way into authoritarians. However you say that word, you know what I'm talking about. It's it doesn't make any common sense. I mean, there's no common sense to it. It's I don't understand the reasoning behind it, other than you were talking earlier about a weak system, and a weak system's easier to control.
That's very true. That's very true. Uh, I just wonder, does anyone think that we're going to see? Um, oh, excuse the use of the term here. Um, a wake up of the American electorate in the next cycle? Are we going to see a Democrat takeover of the very close House and of the Senate that could actually do something to oppose the authoritarian regime that we're seem to be living under now? Mama, what do you think? Hope is something that's important to hold on to today. That's for sure. Um, we don't have to keep this to Doge. That's for sure. Unless you had something you look like you wanted to say, Casey.
Well, yeah, it gets me thinking about the importance of local communities. Um, because I had talked about this a little while back. I was shown this post by a sociologist that talked about the shock doctrine and how sometimes there are deliberate efforts from I want to be careful, I guess, like because I want to keep it professional too to an extent, and offer some benefit of the doubt. I mean, the way I see it, it does seem that we are being overwhelmed with the amount of changes that they've tried to make and then they take back and then they try to make some more and they take it back, and it becomes so overwhelming for individuals to deal with. So the response to that I've heard that I appreciate, because often we'll hear, oh, well, this is what it is, but then there's, excuse me, we don't get the follow up of what do we do with this information. Um, One of the things we can do is focus on building communities, working together to kind of split up who's going to focus on what topics and educate each other so that we can start to build and prepare for the next elections. I think that's what gives me hope is knowing that I've met like-minded individuals and we have common goals in listening to each other, and it's not about an us versus them. We very much want it to be inclusive towards anyone and to work together so that everyone benefits from it.
Agreed. I
Yeah.
agreed. I prefer my tax dollars to support those who need it the most, not corporations who post profit margins in the billions and that are making record profit margins year over year. I I want better roads for everyone, and that creates jobs. I want to have healthcare that works for everyone, which creates jobs. I want to have a good electric infrastructure. And in today's age, IT infrastructure is even more important than ever. There's not a reason why we shouldn't have 5G internet all over the United States, paid for by tax dollars, that will help the lowest people reach the services that they need. There are tons of people out there that qualify for disability because of physical ailments, let alone mental problems, that they can't reach the services that are necessary. And these DOGE cuts um, are definitely going to endanger those services. Um, the Republicans and conservatives keep speaking about the problems of mental illness in this country and claim that the entire country's gone crazy, but they don't want to fund any kind of program that would do anything about it. And to me, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Can someone explain it to me like I'm a 5 year old? I mean, I know I'm in a room full of people who think like I do, and that's a bit of an echo chamber. And, that's something maybe we should all avoid. And that's why I've put the Discord server link here in the chat on this live for anybody who's watching to go ahead and click that link, join in here, and explain to us why conservative policies, or specifically these DOGE cuts, are going to work for the average American people or for the American people at all, and not just the 1%. Because I don't think anyone can. That's a challenge. But we can move on. I think from DOGE, we've covered it pretty well, and it doesn't seem like anybody's going to try to come in here and tell us we're wrong or how we're wrong. And so let me ask you guys this: who's ready to invade Panama? I saw several clips from videos with Trump in the Oval Office talking about how China controls Panama, and we should, for some reason, because maybe the treaty that we signed with Panama after building the canal just doesn't matter anymore because Trump didn't negotiate it. I don't know. But I know I look at America's history with our treaties, and it's my opinion, with our performance, you can't trust America. They didn't even stick to the treaties they made with the people they stole the land from. Ask our natives if their treaties are being fulfilled. I don't think you're going to find one that can say that they're being treated fairly. And now we're trying to go back on the treaty with Panama. We're trying to coerce Canada in becoming a 51st state. That's crazy. It's weird. It's crazy. And I don't understand why anyone would think, number one, Canadians would want to be part of America. Or number two, all the Canadians would be given up to be part of America. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I think what you said about that we can't trust right now. That's where I'm at. That's just because what I was saying with like the shock doctrine. I don't know how much I don't think Trump has that type of mentality. I think it's more so the people that he's surrounded himself with that put together Project 2025. I think for Trump it's less deliberate. He's still fueling it in that sense, but he also just throws out whatever he's thinking in the moment, and it does tend to be lots of threats, and it does destabilize our allyship with people that we've had previous, good relations with, or at least tried to. We had some kind of veil of that. And maybe that's what some of the supporters would say, is that none of this has been genuine.
Mm-hmm.
I've spoken to some people in these minority communities that have pushed for this accelerationism ideology from that mindset, that they're like, we haven't been taken care of for so long anyways, just burn it all to the ground.
Hmm.
But that's where I agree with what you said, Don, that working within the systems that we have is at least something. It allows for some amount of stability that we can work within to improve, as opposed to trying to scrap it and then just start over. Because I can't. That's where, like, yeah, I would like to talk more with these people, because I know, like, even for those minorities that I've spoken to, I don't know if they're a minority within a minority. I don't know if they, represent the overall community, the average opinions within. But it goes towards what you had said as well, that, a third of the population voted for this, and the rest, I don't know how serious they are when they make those kind of comments. A lot of them don't vote. Like, there's a guy at a shop that I go to every once in a while that's Native American, and the amount of conversations we've had where he's so passionate about it, but he doesn't vote. And I'm just like, what? Okay, I mean, respect, but at the end of the day, like, those are the types of people that I'd rather be. Well, I don't know how much I'd rather be trying to facilitate conversations with everyone and see what we can do to move forward together. But yeah, it just overall feels destabilizing mentally to just not be able to trust and not know what's going to happen. There's an amount of comfort, and maybe that's a privileged position to hold. I don't know.
That could be. It could be a privileged position. You know, I'm kind of the poster child for Project 2025. If you look at me now, if you know me, I'm definitely a victim. But this is what they're pushing for. It's people like me. I'm an old white guy. Okay, I'm cranky. I wear glasses. I can't see and I can't move around very well. I'm exactly what has been running the country since its inception. And I don't know. I'm sure my shirt's reversed, but the first word on it is diversity. And I touched on this earlier. I fully believe that diverse opinions, people from different backgrounds, can all work together and form a much better product, corporation, nation, community than just a whole bunch of people who all look or act or think alike. Now, granted, it's easy to talk to you guys because we all think quite a bit the same. We have our differences and we have different opinions on other things, and that's what makes us interesting. In my opinion, it's also what gives us strength. And the way things are right now, as concerned as people are, as just downright scared people are, there are millions who depend on that check at the first every month for their retirement, to pay the bills, to uh, stay in their homes, to make sure that they can afford their medicines. And it seems like Democrats, for all their flaws, want to work for those people. Whereas you add a conservative Republican into the mix and they want to work for the corporation under this really weird thought that it's going to eventually trickle down to the people that need it most. We're one of the richest nations in the world. Why should they have to wait? Why do they need to suffer? How many women need to die because their rights are no longer protected for their health care anymore? These are things that I get upset about, and these are things that I want answers to. And I know I'm not alone.
Yeah. You also gave me the thought because I love my parents very much.
Could you get me a cup of coffee? I'm
And
losing my
I
voice.
enjoy being able to talk to them.
Thank you.
But there are times that we've had conversations about the tyranny of the majority, and they feel, and it could be fair to say from an intersectional perspective that everyone has something that they could identify as within their identity as something that puts them into a minority category. Um, and it's interesting because, like, now I'm thinking of my mom, who has spoken quite a bit about how she feels persecuted as a Catholic. And we've talked a bit about the history. I know that there has been persecution towards Christians in general. Um, I think I saw actually a report from one of Trump's executive orders that did have some truth in it, that attacks on religious communities, including Christians, have been increasing. So they want to try to protect. Um, but, and this goes back to what I was saying about some, I guess, I had the thought that there are people that think we have other systems in place already that they would rather see used instead of the government. Like, my mom will advocate that she wants people to be able to turn to the church. But that's where I start to question, how inclusive is your church? Is it going to put other minorities in danger? I think of, the Catholic Church has kind of come around on homosexuality, but I don't think it's been enough. And yeah, their messages towards women's rights. And I don't mean this to be an attack. It's a genuine, I think, challenge that Catholics should keep in mind, that when your leadership does not allow women, what does that create for women? It's built into the system to have oppression, and they can try to argue however they like that, sure, they uplift women in other ways, that the women have their roles, but that's I think it just is such a long conversation to have with folks that at times I'm kind of like, I want to keep having the conversations, but I'd love to uplift more voices that counter that, because I don't know if they're hearing enough of it. I don't know if they're listening enough.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's a very well, Catholicism itself is very patriarchal, and with their history of their treatment of women, their exclusionary practices, um, and LGBTQ, the support of the slave trade, and moving priests around that do inappropriate things with minors to keep it YouTube safe. I don't think that maybe the church is the greatest place to look on anything. And I would say that for, yeah, for any religion that's largely practiced in the United States. I've noticed myself it's taken quite a turn from my younger years of hearing preaching about the love of Jesus Christ the sins of large business, the terrors of big government, and then you look at the people who are pushing for today's America to be a white Christian nation officially. Those are all the things that they're doing. What happened to the spirit of the WWJD bracelets? Do you guys remember that, or am I really telling my age?
Oh no, I remember.
So
I remember.
let's practice a little mythological mind reading. What would Jesus say about Trump's government? So what makes you say that? Billy, what's your take on the situation?
Well, I'm in line with it, with the same ideas. I was part of the Lutheran denomination for a number of years, and looking back now, as just like y'all were talking earlier, the oppression of women in the church, the particular section of the Lutheran Church, it was split into two sections, but the section that I was associated with at the time, the women of the church could only go to a certain level in the church. They couldn't be a pastor or preacher, reverend, whatever their title was. Um, so the highest that they could go was a church council member. Um, but yeah, looking at what would Jesus do as of today, or what would he think as of today? Um, I think he'd be disgusted, in my opinion. Um, there's way too much evil in the world, and people are overlooking it for minute reasons. Their priorities are totally off key.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion.
And do you have a history to base that on? Were you just a regular church goer? Or?
I was a Sunday school teacher, a youth leader, an evangelism chairman, an outreach ambassador for the Mid South District. I went to several district conventions, voted for their district leaders, was there for a long time. I was like a brother to the pastor of the church, who actually went on to Lima, Peru, to start up churches over in Peru.
Oh, okay.
So
So,
I got to learn the quote unquote business aspect of the church.
uh-huh.
And y'all were talking about businesses, and church falls into a big business.
Agreed. Agreed. So it sounds like you would know what you were talking about if we were to ask somebody what they think Jesus would think about today's administration. Thanks for your input, man. Casey, I saw you had
No
unmuted a
problem.
second ago. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, oh gosh, sorry. I think it's interesting from the perspective of, or the difference in perspectives when you're in these organizations and working with them. I think what's challenging about it is that you're only getting one perspective, and you do have to work to ask questions, to look for sources outside of what you're being told, and try to find and challenge that enough to where I'm starting to think of the Dead Sea Scrolls and how there are different interpretations, and you might be able to say, well, there's an argument that this Jesus from the Bible might have actually promoted this type of behavior because there were quotes of him saying things like, I come not to bring peace, but with like fire and sword.
Mm-hmm.
So there seems to be, and that was common at the time. Um, I'm thankful that I've gone out of my way to take like some Jewish study courses um, to help kind of challenge and understand the history at the time. That, and it still is. It's something that maybe isn't as common. Definitely not within the Jewish faith, but or Jewish communities, not necessarily faith for all of them, but you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
They're at the time that Jesus was being conceived, because I'm not convinced that he was a real person. I think it's more likely that there, because we have evidence of so many different people at that time that were preaching similar things. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's likely that the was the Council of Nicaea or a few others over the thousands of years since that have tried to package different aspects of and attribute it to a single person. But again, yeah, that goes to, you know, they're feeding you what they think is appropriate,
Yes,
and I don't think that's through the critical lens. But yeah, does that kind of make sense?
it does. It does. And when you add, the history of religion in general, especially Christianity and its offshoots, Islam included, um, there seemed to be a push towards men being the one who tells everybody what every scripture really means and getting away from government and politics and onto religion, which I am always for. We, if we had the truth, if these books that were created so many years after the facts that they claim to report, how many versions of the truth are there? It seems to me that there would be only one. Yet we have the King James version of the Bible, which King James was the one who wanted and had that one actually put together because that was the parts he liked the most. And we've got several other versions of the Bible, and the Quran is built off of one of those versions of the Bible. So, where's the original? Where's the one that's true? Why were so many books omitted from the truth? And how can you show that anything in there is true when you look at all the places that it contradicts itself, that it contradicts physics, that it contradicts the way that we observe the way the world works? I have a hard time putting any stock in a religious text as a form of truth. And with truth, there's no interpretation. There's no, what do you really mean by that? What do you really mean by that is exactly what it says, and that's truth. So, once again, I'd like to invite anybody that may be watching who'd want to join. Click the Discord link that I've put a couple times in the chat. It's also pinned at the top. Smash the like button. Consider subscribing. This is just the first of what I hope to be a, a, a lot of very good talks that we're going to have on a weekly basis, usually Sunday around 3 p.m. Eastern Time. I want to take the last few minutes here and just ask everybody to just jump on the mic real quick and let me know, let everyone know um, how you think the country's going, and if you have even one small idea that might be a good thing to email a senator or a representative about that's affecting your life personally. So, who would like to kick off?
As it sits right now, I think the world or the United States is going to hell in a handbasket very quickly. Um, if I can just email my senator and just tell him one thing, and just be like, listen to your constituents. Listen to the ones who are telling you that it's hurting them the most, and pay attention to what they're saying. Because as it sits right now, they're not paying attention to nothing. They're not listening to what their constituents and people like us are saying. They're just listening to the almighty dollar.
Thank you, Mama. That was a lot of good points there. I really appreciate that. Who'd like to go next?
I think I want to echo similarly that we've seen the several representatives that have not been showing up, or they do show up for these town halls and then they end up leaving when there's pushback. So there's a part of me that if I were to say just one thing, do your job, stay there, listen to people.
Right on. That's very good sentiments. I agree. Our representatives, our senators, well, our Republican senators have been told by their parent corporation, governing body, whatever you want to call them, not to do town halls, which is the way that they're supposed to interact with the public historically. And so, yeah, definitely listen. Jeet, I appreciate you joining us, man. We were just about to wrap up, but what I was doing right when you joined is going around the room and asking people if they had just one issue that affected them personally that they could email or write or call their senator or representative about. What would it be?
If you don't mind, real quick before, I'm going to frame this as an opportunity for you to think for a second since you just joined. But really,
Because I just woke up, so.
Oh, goodness.
yeah. But I was just thinking, because maybe there's an argument to be made that they're being told not to show up for these town halls in person because there's some type of threat to their safety. To which I say, we have technology to help overcome that. You could do these town halls online. You know, we can, again, going back to what I said about focusing on the local communities, maybe there are people at the local level, older constituents, that maybe aren't as comfortable with the technology. And this is where we should be working with younger generations, asking them to try to step forward and help the older generations get comfortable with this technology and learn as much as they can, try to adapt. And Yeah, because there's something to be said about the physical safety for people. I myself am pretty much primarily online. I don't go to these in-person town halls, and I should. But yeah, just to try to give a little nudge, I guess.
I appreciate that. And you bring up some really good points. We do have technology that, if it's a physical threat, would make them safe.
You ever seen that picture of that cat that looks like he just woke up and his hair's everywhere and his face is all? I feel like when I turn my camera on, that's what I'm gonna look like. But I have no hair to do that, so you just have to see my
I was
tired
just
old
gonna
face.
say we need to get you a wig.
So it's hard for me to think of an issue that directly affects me. I guess I'm fortunate in the sense that I don't suffer in a lot of the ways that many other people do, especially in my county, for instance. I'm in a red county in a blue state. We're apparently the only county in the state that has a Republican representative, and we're under austere budgets. Of course, you know how that goes,
Mhm.
which means they're cutting anything that helps anybody who's low, struggling, low socioeconomic status. So I think that's how it affects me the most is just seeing all the stuff that goes on around me. Personally, like speaking of the youth and supporting the youth, my daughter we were talking about a story today. One of her friends lost their job. And some of the stories make sense. It's like, why? They were stealing drinks here and there or little snacks or something. And I probed a little deeper, and it's because they're food insecure. It's not because they want to steal. They don't want to be a criminal. They are desperate.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, and it's sad because this is a young kid just out of maybe high school, college age, trying to work, trying to get by. This kid is also gay, so struggles with his parents, pays exorbitant amount of money to his parents for rent and can't afford to eat or drink or, a lot of the time. So
Oh wow.
that's kind of just seeing all the suffering around me. And, look, I'm not rich by any means. We're well off enough that we don't have to want for anything necessarily. Um, but I think that's the biggest way it affects me is just seeing all the unnecessary suffering that goes on around me.
Right on.
So,
That's
which better policies could help.
yeah. That's a that's a great sentiment, G. Thank you for sharing that, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. It's seeing those who can't do better for themselves that 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 hurts the most. It does. It hurts me to see people struggle, especially in a country with so much that no one needs to. It's unnecessary, and unnecessary suffering is immoral. So thank you guys for joining me today and for sharing your thoughts. And I intend to run one of these every week, and I want to invite all of you guys back uh, to join me again, and we'll have more discussions, and hopefully we can build a community together that we can share and be honest and be trusting and share love with one another. So thanks again for joining me, and everybody have